Hello, everyone, and good evening or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are joining us from. And thank you so much for being here at the second annual Native American and Indigenous Peoples Public Relations Program. Although we're all coming from different reservations, cities, and states, we would like to begin the night with a land acknowledgement. The Museum of PR, headquartered in Manhattan, stands on Indigenous territory that Lenape peoples have been pushed out of since the 1600s. Although we'll discuss action-based land acknowledgements at length later, we urge you all to acknowledge the land you yourselves are on as well. Now we will take some time to thank the sponsors of tonight's event. They are the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communications at the University of Georgia, Amazon, SAIC, Enbridge, Page, Profit PR, Renew PR, TV1, the Bonnie Yablon Foundation, Spokesman Communications, the Diversity Action Alliance, Muckrack, and Compro. The Museums of PR's diverse series events, such as this one, rely on the generosity of our sponsors to continue making waves in how we approach DEI and public relations. We have a great show lined up for you tonight, featuring a powerful lineup of speakers and panelists from all across the communications industry. And now I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful moderator, Principal of Badger PR, and founder of IPRA, or the Indigenous Peoples Public Relations Association. She is Candace Hamana.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Candace Hamana. Thank you so much to the Museum of PR for hosting this important discussion. Thank you to all of the sponsors who have lent their support as we talk about issues and communications roles that we play either in business or in business for ourselves or as organizations and corporations. I am so excited to be here and I'm honored to be your moderator. I would like to welcome to the initial discussion that is based upon the traditional storytelling in Indigenous communities. And I have April Tinhorn, who will be joining us this evening. She's the Chief Connector and CEO of Tinhorn Consulting. I've got Brittany Coca. She does internal communications for Amazon. I've got Taylor Whitebird Salo. She is the advisor of tribal engagement, public affairs, communications, and sustainability with Enbridge. I also have Leona Enright. She's the business recruitment specialist with the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation. And I've got Kathy Baird, who is Senior Director of Global Communications with Nike, and she is also the incoming Chief Communications Officer for the Washington Post. I also have Ben Bourne, who is the President and CEO of Symmetry PR and Managing Partner for Eagle Feather News. And finally, I've got Leanne Hall, Chief Executive Officer of Creative Fire. Welcome, everyone, to the discussion this evening. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started just by doing a quick round of introductions, and I'll go ahead and have you guys introduce yourself and share just a little bit about the work that you do. And I think we'll just go in the order that I read everyone off so that way I don't miss anyone. We'll go ahead and start with April Tinhorn.
Thank you, Candace. Gamun, yamal April Tinhorn Ixichka, Nyawabai Wamu Ichanam. Hello, my name is April Tinhorn and I'm Wallapai, Navajo, and Chinese. And I'm the mother to Zoe Bender, my 10-year-old little prodigy and my mentor-mentee relationship. I come from the Wallapai people of the Tall Pines in the Grand Canyon area. And I could say that I have been blessed for the past 12 years to own my company, Tinhorn, and we provide facilitation services that help Native and Native receptive people who want to establish mutually beneficial relationships with Native peoples by offering facilitation, training, mediation, and public relations services. to do business with Native people and by enabling them to more effectively access and engage in mutually beneficial relationships with us. Hankia.
Beautiful. Ascoli, thank you. Brittany Coca, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Candace. I'm Brittany Coca. I am a proud member of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe in South Dakota, and I am part of the Operations Internal Comms team for Amazon. So I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and move on to Leona Enright.
Hello, good evening or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leona Enright. I am a business recruitment specialist for the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation in Oregon. I'm an enrolled member, as well as I just wanted to put out there, my Indian name is Tiaipum. I am also a current and active member of the National Millennial and Gen Z community, where I advocate on and provide a tribal voice to the organization, as well as apart from that, I am kind of moving forward in a podcast voicing hidden histories of the tribal nations in my area. So thank you.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. I can't wait to hear more about that, Leona. Kathy Baird.
Almataku Yape, Jante Washte Nape Chizape Kisto. My name is Kathy Baird. I greet you with a good heart. I am an enrolled citizen of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe. I am Sichangu Lakota, and I'm of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin as well. Currently, I'm in a bit of transition in my life and career. I live right now I'm on the Nike campus in Beaverton, Oregon, where I work as a senior director of global communications. And in 2 weeks, I'll be on the East Coast, living in Washington, D.C., again, working as the chief communications officer of the Washington Post. So a really enormous transition in my life. I also co-chair Nike's Native American Network, which is a big part of the work that I do here in corporate America. It's really nice to be here. Thank you, Candace.
Thank you, Kathy. I know Nike does so much work with Indigenous communities, and we definitely feel your presence down here in Arizona with the Native American basketball with NABI. And Native American basketball, I'm missing the I on that, but thank you so much. Invitational. Yes, thank you. As well as Nike's N7 program. It's amazing. May we go ahead and move on to Ben Bourne, who's on the call with us as well.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Bourne. I'm from Treaty 6 territory, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I'm originally from Yellow Quill First Nation on Treaty 4 territory here in Saskatchewan. I'm the president and COO, Chief Operating Officer of Symmetry Public Relations, based here in Saskatoon, and also the managing editor of Eagle Feather News. And a third job that I have is I'm a sessional lecturer in strategic communications at the First Nations University of Canada. Primarily my work, I help organizations build relationships, two-way mutually beneficial relationships between Indigenous communities and also several organizations here in Canada. We take really great pride in our work, and I'm looking forward to sharing more and hearing from others today.
Wonderful. And finally, Leanne Hall, may you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much. I'm joining today from the traditional territory of the Six Nations of the Grand River and the Haudenosaunee people, otherwise known as Brantford, Ontario, in Canada. My name is Leanne Hall. I'm the CEO of Creative Fire. I'm an ally, and my two children, Hunter and Brooke, both in university, are First Nation from Sucker Creek in Northern Alberta. So Creative Fire is a 100% owned Indigenous consulting and communications firm. 100% purpose driven. So that's why our team members get up and every single day is to support really the bridging the gaps of understanding and knowledge between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. Our team really are motivated about making a difference. So we have First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people on our team, as well as we support other Indigenous companies and partner with them on many engagements across the globe. So an honor to be here, and thank you to the Museum of PR for putting on this really important conversation this evening. So thank you.
Awesome. I love that, Leanne. And I think that you hit on a really good topic about our role as communicators and being the bridge. You know, some people wear the hat of a liaison for their corporation. And I know that that work is so important, especially when you're, like you said, wanting to make those authentic connections and engagement. It looks like Taylor Whitebird Salo has joined us. And Taylor, we were actually just doing introductions. So if you could say hi to everyone and welcome.
So my name is Taylor Whitebird Salo. I am a little newer to Enbridge, but in my role, I like to focus on meaningful engagement with the tribes, primarily in Wisconsin.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining the panel discussion today. We're going to go ahead and start with the first round of questions. The first question is, can you tell us about one of your favorite past projects where you felt your work uplifted and supported the Indigenous communities? We're going to go ahead and start with Leona.
Thank you so much, Candace. I get the hot seat first. So a project that I am really, I mean, of course, as I mentioned, I participated with the National Millennial and Gen Z community, and I was the first Native American to join the community as well as represent the Eastern Oregon University as an Indigenous person, and, you know, collaborating a lot with some of the companies that we got to speak to as a collective group was great. But, you know, especially giving my 2 cents into, you know, kind of perspectives that tribal communities face. And apart from that, it kind of led into a role or a cohort, I guess. I participated in the Unleash the She-Ro in You cohort with Sue Ann Hong and OCA. And we presented to a panel at the Women's Leadership. I was in a group, we presented to the panel, and we wanted to focus on hidden histories. That was the concept behind the presentation, sorry. And I thought it was important, right? My partner, Sherry, she is from Japanese descent. And so she wanted to bring histories of her culture to the forefront. But which, you know, Indigenous communities, we don't see the history in our books. And I wanted to really focus in on those untold stories and those unheard voices. And so right now, it's not a past project, but I'm actually working with a lot of tribal elders and youth within my community to kind of communicate that message. And the 3 topics that I wanted to highlight were tribal language. As you know, some of our tribal languages are being lost, and we are preserving our language right now within our community, and it's such an important topic, as well as cultural appropriation. I wanted to bring in the youth, you know, to be inclusive and support that voice. I wanted to know what the youth thought about cultural appropriation, and the last topic is assimilation. We all know that those boarding schools is a topic right now, and a lot of people don't understand what tribal nations and Indigenous people, how we're suffering, and those are stories that need to be brought to the forefront. And what better way than bringing in tribal elders, tribal youth, and tribal voices.
I love that, and I can definitely, I think that resonates with a lot of us because we bring our lived experience to these roles. And so, and they say that, you know, it's kind of like walking in 2 worlds sometimes, where you've got your roles and responsibilities as a member of your tribal community, but then, you know, you are working as a professional and as a communicator. And sometimes, especially if your role involves, you know, representing or speaking to tribes that you know more intimately. Like here in Arizona, there's 22 tribal nations, and there's a good chance you're going to meet somebody that you know in the business circle, but you may also have met them at the powwow as well. So really being cognizant of that, but also knowing that your role is sometimes wearing multiple hats, where you're talking about your culture, but you're also advocating and wanting to share the issues that are most prevalent in the communities that you're working with. Can we get a little bit more insight on that from, let's see here, Kathy?
It's really hard for me to pick. I was like racking my brain because I have 500 that come to mind. But first, thank you so much, Leona. That was a beautiful answer too. So let me just tell you about one thing that we do here on the Nike campus in November. And as I told you, I'm in this transition between leaving one life on the West Coast and moving to a new life on the East Coast. And one of the reasons it's hard for me to leave is because our network here of Native Americans and Indigenous people is so strong. And we work tirelessly to elevate our voices and create moments of visibility for us. And in one of the ways we do that, at the beginning of Heritage Month every year, we say we are Indigenous every day, but in November, we want to go really big, right? So we wear our biggest earrings and we are as bold as possible. And so we take down the flags at the base of our headquarters and campus. For anyone who's been to the Nike campus, it is very large. I could show you actually a little bit of it right here. Don't know if you can see any of that. It's just that we sit on a lake. It's just really incredible and beautiful. But as you drive up to the campus, you're met with flags of all of the countries in the world that Nike operates in and does business in. And so we take those down and we hang up the flags of tribal nations at the entrance to campus. It feels like a small act, for something that Nike can do to allow us that space. But for each of us who are Indigenous and work here at Nike, it is so meaningful. I mean, we shed tears, we sing, we cry, it's just a really beautiful moment. And I think to have that representation, I don't know if the flags are as noticeable to other people when they drive on the campus, but for us, just knowing that we are first people at the very first entrance to the campus feels really good. Second, really quick, I will just tell you that we recently were able to have the company acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day. Many companies, depending on states and territories you may live in, you may or may not recognize this day. Again, we're Indigenous every day. So for those of us who are working in our communities, it might not be like that day is already, it's every single day is Indigenous Peoples Day. But on this day here at Nike, it's a big deal for us to have it recognized and honored. And so we did that both inside and outside the company. We had our CEO, and we got to write a message from him in his voice to basically talk about acknowledging the day. And then externally, we were able to launch a couple of out-of-home placements in Times Square and in LA, which talk about the original athlete and Nike's commitment to the Indigenous community. So those are just two ways I think we've been able to influence moments in a large brand like the swoosh, and make sure that our voices are heard and that our employees, especially here who work here, are seen in that expression.
I love that. And you talked about the external communications that you've done with Nike, and then you touched a little bit internally as well. And I know that Brittany also has some experience with internal communications. And Brittany, can you share your favorite past project where you've felt like you've uplifted and supported Indigenous communities?
Yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to. And I love those examples. And Kathy, the flags, wow, that's so powerful and a really neat example that Nike's doing. I love that. Similarly, at Amazon, we go big for Native American Heritage Month, Indigenous Peoples Month in November. And I have the privilege in internal communications to be able to storytell and amplify our employees' stories. And so for the past, I've been with Amazon for a little over almost 2.5 years now. And I've had the privilege of working, this will be my, I think my third actual campaign this year that I get to work on Native American Heritage Month. But what I love most about it is just being able to celebrate and amplify, stories from our diverse employee population in operations through our channels. And not only do these campaigns and celebrations raise awareness for Native American heritage, but they also promote allyship. And it's an opportunity that we get, we share educational resources. So whether that's recommendations for books, music, podcasts, like movies, We share also employee spotlights. So about 1 to 3 Native American tribes per week, we share it through our channels, their stories, and amplify those employee spotlight stories. And also we share Native facts, like did you knows, and our learnings around the communities, in our traditional and digital channels. And so it's a really exciting time to be working in internal comms, and it's something that I'm proud of and I love to work on. So
that's exciting. And, those small bits of information that you're able to share intermittently throughout the month, and then those more concerted efforts, they really make a big impact. And so it's nice to know that big groups, big corporations, and global brands like Nike and Amazon are really making strides in that area and raising that awareness. I think that's beautiful. What about you, Ben? Can you tell us a little bit about your favorite past projects where you've uplifted and supported Indigenous?
There's two that comes to mind. One is with one of our clients and also my employer, two hands, the First Nations University of Canada. We were contracted to work on a project, a podcast project, and the university received about just over $500,000 to create a podcast series to preserve in dying Indigenous languages. And this is actually a similar theme that we've already heard already, but we worked on the brand development and the kind of the strategic planning to kind of implement this kind of initiative for the university. That was a really unique opportunity to listen to elders and to participate in a project that will kind of capture the dying languages. The podcasts are spoken in those languages. They're not spoken in English. And then to be able to preserve those languages in history in perpetuity, for people to learn and continue to share them even after those language keepers have passed away. So I think that's a really unique opportunity that we've had to kind of uplift and support Indigenous communities. Another one is through some work we've done through the Saskatoon Housing Initiative partnerships. Homelessness is a really important issue to me here in Saskatoon, and one that affects about 80% of the homeless people here in Saskatoon are Indigenous. So, we do a lot of work with them on their conference planning and their grant writing, and they received a bunch of funding to continue being the leader in their cold weather strategy and implementation here in Saskatoon. So I think that's a really a project that's very close to my heart, and also in some ways is a way that we can impact and support the Indigenous community here at home.
Wow, yeah, that took my breath away, just knowing that you're doing that kind of work for the unsheltered, especially given the region that you live in up in Saskatoon. We're spoiled down here in Arizona. A cold day for us is, in the 50s, and that's only during a few months out of the year. But there's real concern and compassion for our unsheltered Indigenous. And so I'm glad
it can get to minus 40 Fahrenheit here, right? Or colder, right? And so, these people need a home. So it's something that's really, really important to me. Absolutely.
Yeah, wow. To have those types of challenges and to be able to work as a communicator in those communities is something I think that a lot of us in one way or another that work has affected us as well. April, I know you work with a lot of tribes in remote areas. Can you share one of your proud moments that you've uplifted and supported Indigenous communities?
Sure, Candice. So this project had to do with uplifting us as Native women matriarch business owners. It started with a project called Project Dreamcatcher that was a fully funded 1-week business boot camp for Arizona tribal women business leaders. And, they had international curriculum. They had the, lodging, they had everything. They just needed to have 20 participants to start this first cohort. I think they tried 3 different times and they weren't able to reach and get the number of applications. And so why this matters is because in our tribal communities, Native women bring in 2/3 of the household income. You know, as Native women in tribal communities, we're buying and affecting at minimally like 3 generations, you know, parents, ourselves, our loved ones. We usually have kids, grandkids in the home. And then also, so that was why this matters to me. And I was recruited at that time to be in the first cohort, but I was able to also have the hosting organization become a client. And we utilized really just the relationships we already had with Arizona tribal women owners, because as I'm sure there's other stories here, you know, the mistrust, like why are you coming in and what's your intentions here? So, you know, we were able to help with branding, help with messaging, and in tribes, this is before pandemic, you know, we went into the different tribal communities and connected with different key women in the community who we had relationships with. And just happy to say that they just finished their 5th cohort, and the 6th cohort's about to start next month. And it's really cool to see that effect, you know, that we're at that point now of women business owners being in ideation to more of them being in like full-blown, you know, 5-7 years of being in business and then mentoring each other. So lots of amazing things happening there. And I just wanted to share, you know, with everyone who's here, if you're asking yourself during Native American Heritage Month, which as someone else already said, it's every day, but if you're asking yourself, how can I make an impact in tribal communities, I say buy from a Native women business owner, because that dollar is going to circle multiple times in our Indigenous economies. So thank you.
That's beautiful. I love it. And I always admire April and the work that she does. Her work as an alumni of the Project Dreamcatcher, and then she's really stepped into a leadership and panelist role as well, and offered mentorship. And she's, what I learned today is called a scatterer, right? A scatterer of knowledge and resources and encouragement. And yeah, April is a phenomenal leader, and I'm happy to have her as a friend and colleague. Leanne, can you tell us a little bit about a project that you've worked on with Indigenous communities? I know that probably one of the cornerstones of Create a Fire is about making authentic and transparent engagement. And I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, really exciting. So in Canada, National Indigenous History Month is actually in June. So last year, TikTok Canada approached us and said, you know, they really hadn't done anything impactful in Canada with, you know, Indigenous people. So in honor of National Indigenous History Month, they wanted to use the platform to shine a light on the profound global impact of Indigenous creators. And so we worked very closely with TikTok to develop a campaign called Living Stories. And that campaign was really a blending of traditional storytelling and using this modern technology to give this platform to these wonderful creators. And so we said, like, rather than it just be about, you know, food and dance, let's use it as an education tool. And so people shared their language, their traditions, you know, their stories, and this was all age groups. So our teams really supported on, you know, the concept, the research, the insights, the support to those, you know, to those creators, you know, having access to elders, you know, some media training and other cultural and creative resources. So an interesting and very difficult time is just before that campaign was the discovery, you know, of the unmarked graves in Kamloops. So although the campaign was to launch, supposed to launch on June 1st, we had to pause that campaign. And, you know, we did everything we could to support, you know, our families, our friends, Indigenous people across Canada. So we paused that, but we came back to it when the creators really felt it was the right time. And since that time, we've had over 12 million views of the Living Stories campaign. So that one is something to me, is like I said, how do we use platforms for education and to build cultural awareness? That was really important. And currently, we're working with another platform. We're shining light on 3 very small Indigenous owned businesses and looking at how do we drive holiday sale revenue to their businesses. So that campaign will be launching shortly. But again, through all of those, I think it's just such an important role that we all play of sharing, knowledge and education and having that live for forever. I think that's a really important part.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I love the work that you're doing. That sounds really amazing. And I think that the impact of that work is probably seen almost immediately, especially in light of some of the insights April shared with us about, women Indigenous business owners, and they're elevating in status, and that the recognition and the need for them to be supported in their entrepreneurial journey, I think, is something that is emerging out of COVID and out of all of us, getting more comfortable with having these kinds of discussions online and allowing those audiences to grow. So thank you for sharing that. Taylor, Leanne mentioned that they had a TikTok campaign to kind of educate. Can you tell me a little bit about Enbridge? What kind of platforms do you use, or that you get the most bang for your buck, I guess, to support and uplift Indigenous communities?
A lot of it is just getting out in the community and having conversations. I actually, before I came on with Enbridge, was involved with creating a podcast that's called Middle of the Res Road. And that shares a lot of stories of, just the Indigenous people and their struggles and getting into the industry, and just, where they've come from. That actually led into me being with Enbridge too, is working on that podcast and in support. And a lot of like what the company does is we actually do, they do have the option of like having Indigenous Peoples Day. They celebrate that, they're aware of that. And like one of the big things that I'm working on with this company too is I like to draw, as a fun fact about me. I love woodland art and just designing. And I actually was able to do some floral designs, and I shared it with them, and we put it on some bags. So when I go into the communities and I'm, just advocating for the company, I'm also listening to the people that are out there and their concerns, and having something that's so dear to me and I can share it with them. It's really, really, it's nice for me. And it makes a change. They're willing to have their logo with different designs. They're willing to listen and learn a lot more about the culture. I get to go out and talk to people about the trades and, how it could benefit them and if they're interested in it. And it's something that, the training and education, employment opportunities that come along, and try to help them. And even that leads to some business developments and, different community development. And that's such a rewarding thing, because we're not taught about that a lot. And we're not shown other ways besides just living on the reservation or being a part of, different things. There's more out there, and it's really important to share that. And it's kind of cool I get to do that. And it's really exciting for me to go out there and have these conversations, because that's where it all starts. It's cultural awareness, it's industry awareness, it's life experience. And that I think is really, really fun for me to do, and it's really big. And I can honestly say I'm very proud to work for a company that does recognize me being an Indigenous female and supporting me in what I want to do, and they listen.
And I think you hit on an important point, is that especially with Indigenous communities, it really is about that face-to-face time. And it means a lot to tribal communities when you take the time to go and visit them on their reserve or on their tribal lands and really engage them in a way that feels very authentic, and to be able to be a part of a project like the reconciliation action plan that you shared with us. Yep. I think that's really exciting, because you're able to share your perspective in a way that probably feels really personal too, and is kind of healing in a sense as well. Yep. Thank you so much for sharing. I think these stories are all amazing. We're going to go ahead and move on to another question, and that is, how do you use traditional PR tactics in your role as a communicator, or what tactics, I guess, would be your favorite in your role as a communicator? And Ben, we'll go ahead and start with you this time.
For sure. I think we can all agree as communications professionals that stories connect people, right? And Indigenous people have lots of stories to tell. And so one of the ways that we use, or the tools that we often use in our work, and it's the one we're called often the most use, is actually our media relations work. So, whether it's, new strategic alliances, or, new partnerships, or, if it's, an organization needing to be profiled and wants to get their story out there, or whatever it is, we're often working with groups on their media training, on their media relations, press events, and also, pitching stories to people, right? And to journalists, and helping get those stories out there as big as they possibly can. And that, I think, for us is one of the big tools that we use, because I think earned media is the way to go when it comes to these kinds of things. And in Canada specifically, there's a lot of appetite for Indigenous stories right now in light of the Truth and Reconciliation happening here. So that's our go-to tool is often media relations, and it's the first one we pick. And then after that, we'll kind of cascade down and pick some of the other ones if we need to.
I agree. There's definitely, even here in the States, there is a need for, and a desire, which is great, for Indigenous communicators to tell their stories using our own Indigenous voices. And that for me is really exciting. Brittany, can you tell us a little bit about your preferred your tactics that you use there at Amazon?
Yes, I'd be happy to. In my current role for the operations internal comms team, we use a mix of both traditional and digital communication tactics, to support storytelling or campaigns, or even just company news internally. So on the digital front, we have an app called A to Z. That's where we are able to reach associates and managers in the operations across North America. We share stories, company updates, and within that app, we have what's called News in 90 Seconds. So that's a quick video update. It gives our employees everything they need to know in just 90 seconds. And then also in our operation buildings, we have digital screens that has campaign content, stories, storytelling, like employee spotlights, business updates, or it could even be like site-specific news. And then we also have an e-newsletter that goes out weekly to our managers called the Weekly Brief. And we also have a manager alert, which is an email, but it's used for ad hoc, urgent updates to the field. And then on more of the traditional print side, we have a platform called Installments, or a channel. It's a printable poster, and it's posted into the restrooms across the North America operation sites. In there, we share small digestible content, employee spotlights as well, like with a little quote and a photo. We also have company news and stories, and that one again is called Installments. So that's a big, kind of highlight of all of the different channels we use within the ops internal comm space.
Wow, thank you. That is a pretty big mix, but it sounds like it's very effective in reaching your employees in all the different ways that they want to receive communication. I know in some of my work before, some employees just want an email, others prefer to watch a video and, or get quick little text messages, or just all the different ways that we have to think about how employees want to be communicated. And it sounds like you guys cover it all over there at Amazon. What about you, Kathy? What is some of your favorite traditional tactics that you use in your role?
Yep, I love what Ben said about story first. So I think that's critical. And then just to match what Brittany says, it's like story first, then audience first. So understanding like, what is it we want to tell and why is it valuable? And then who are the audiences? And that particularly at Nike, we're especially even in our workforce, inside and outside, we're talking to younger demographics. And so, and also in Indian country through N7, we're speaking to a younger demographic. And these are folks who are not really like reading top tier media, although believe me, we would love to have our stories featured in the New York Times and other publishers. But I think where we're most relevant is in social media, to be honest. And I also grew up in digital communications. So I lean way more into that than I do with traditional communications. I think my favorites are just social media in general in terms of reaching younger audiences, digital storytelling. I think where I've been able to blend a bit of digital and traditional of late is in live moments. And we're like hybrid moments, especially like the pandemic taught us so much about ways to like, I mean, for instance, we're on Zoom, and this event here was started during the pandemic where Zoom was the only option. But if there wasn't a pandemic, would we all be in New York somewhere? Or like, how would this be managed? Because the ways that we're doing video conferencing and all of this now just wasn't a thing, pre 2019, 2020. So I think the hybrid moments for me are a way that we've really worked within the company to, and internally and externally, right? I mean, it's like, yes, for our employees, but also beyond that to our external audiences. People want to see from us. They want to hear from us. People want to gather in person again. Like we're really, especially with Heritage Month again this month, like we've been on Zoom for so long that we are creating opportunities for people to connect if they want to through Zoom or through another digital channel. But really like where it comes to the gathering part, it feels so good to be with community again. I think we just really, and for Indigenous people, I have to say, like, I am better when I'm with my people than when I'm not on and away from the technology. Even though I work in technology, I'm better with you when I'm in person. I feel better. I feel more connected. I think you do too, right? So those moments where we can create the live engagement of some sort just seem to be, it's just like a renewed sort of, it feels so good to be back, after all this time where we've been apart. So that's what I would say is most current now. And I just think it's really interesting, right, as communicators to think about how the pandemic changed us, and what's different for us now. And we are forever changed, through mediums, through communications, through tactics. So it'll be interesting to see even how we continue to evolve.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the comment about going live, I think we've really sort of those messages that are shared in live feeds, short form videos and little snippets, Instagram Reels, for example, those really resonate with our audiences more, is what I'm finding. April, can you share a little bit about what your favorite tactics are as a PR and a communications professional when it comes to Indigenous storytelling?
Sure. And I took a totally different slant on when I read this question, focusing more on the traditional part of communications. And I think about like what my grandma taught me, it's all about relationships. It's all about establishing how we're connected. And so I always think about that as, that the introducing myself, like to always do that, because then we might be related, right? When I tell you who I am, who my people are. And I think even though we're in this, I don't know, what are we in right now? A 2.5 or a 3.5 dimension now. We're still at the heart of our little Hollywood square boxes. We're still people, right? And we can still create that connection through by sharing how we're related. So that's sort of where my mind always goes. And then I totally agree with what Kathy was saying earlier. You know, I believe we crave those connections again, and it's been cool, at least in our work, because it seems like we're all a lot of our clients are like being in person, and there's things that like right now that we can't really talk about being in Zoom. Yeah, we can throw it in chat or maybe text it on the side or something, but just being at a symposium earlier today, you know, like the little bit of things like people have changed jobs or all these little, the team moments, I guess that's what I would say. I like that part of in person. So big picture though, what I would say is about the relationships and how we're connected.
Oh, I think you're absolutely 100% correct, especially when it comes to PR and communications. And I know I saw you at the symposium earlier, and we were sitting at different tables, but there is something about having that community and being in community with your Indigenous professionals and breaking bread and just nourishing your body, but also having an opportunity to nourish those relationships, right? That in-person connection, checking in, seeing what work they're doing, and really making those authentic connections that you're able to kind of go back to again as in your role under your business or as a comms professional. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate you for sharing that. Leona, what kind of tactics do you generally gravitate towards when it comes to communications for the tribe?
Thank you, Candace. I exactly thought the same way, April. I was like, you know, when I visit my elders, I always get, who are your people? First question right out the gate, who are your people? And there's a sense of comfort with that because they know who I come from. And when I say Lillian Spino, Louis Spino, immediately they know, oh, you're good people. So I really like those in-person events or, you know, those transactions, right? Our tribe currently utilizes both traditional and social media platforms. We have a CUJ newspaper. We also have multiple social medias on all the platforms. And most of the time we have a radio station, KCUW, where we can, you know, use the radio platform, but also it has a podcast station. So we're moving kind of in that digital realm. But for me in economic and community development, I found that when businesses are approaching us for possibly establishing within our community, it's best to invite them to our community. And I know that, you know, bringing these possible partners in and meeting our tribal leadership, meeting our board of trustees, our elected officials, it's important for not only our leadership, but it's also important for us because what we're doing is we're building that bridge, right? And we want to know them just as much as they want to know us. So bringing them to our table. And I think it's super important. And I think that is more my communication style. And also when we're giving tours, I want them to stop by our museum. I want them to understand our history, our culture, our traditions, and our purpose.
Yeah, it's so much more than just checking a box. And, you know, it's something like you said, it's kinship. It's very relational. And it's about making that connection with your community, but also letting sort of that intention come through in your work. It's very, I know we're all very purpose driven in the work that we do, which I think is what is so exciting about being in this space of Indigenous PR and communications. And I think that's a nice segue to the next question, which I'm kind of still trying to finesse how to answer it. But, you know, basically like, you know, we need to bring in and help the future communicators in these roles, because we need more of these roles in different organizations. And what would you say to someone looking for this type of work in the roles that you have played with the organizations you represent? We'll go ahead and start with Brittany this time around.
Thanks, Candace. I think that's a really great question. For me, my background in diversity is super important to me, and I want to make sure that I can bring my unique experiences, wherever I'm working. And at Amazon, I really find that this is, ingrained in the culture, and it's ingrained in also the leadership principles. For example, one of our leadership principles is our right a lot. And that one says that leaders must seek diverse perspectives and work to disconfirm our own beliefs. And to me, this inclusive behavior, it increases the likelihood that we'll be right a lot. And this information, we'll have the information and insights that we need to invent on behalf of Amazon customers, and rather than just thinking from one perspective. And so really having a diverse background is really beneficial. Also at Amazon, we have 13 affinity groups, which are employee-led groups, and they create a community for belonging and allyship, which is super exciting. They're also designed to foster diversity and inclusion, and just basically strengthen networking and community participation. I'm an active member of our Indigenous Affinity group. And to me, this feels like an inclusive community within Amazon. And some of their tenets include like recruitment, representation, and retention of Indigenous people at Amazon. And anyone is welcome to join the group and either be an ally or, work alongside us Indigenous folks, and also support other Indigenous people at Amazon. And they do really fun events. For example, they'll have, like, especially for this month, we'll have like cooking with Native chefs, or fireside chats with Native authors or leaders. There's also a lot of developmental, professional developmental opportunities as well that's available. And you just get to meet like a lot of other Indigenous folks that you wouldn't have otherwise really crossed paths with. So I think that's a really great, thing that Amazon offers to employees. And I love the fact that it's also employee run and led.
Oh, I like that very much. Yeah, allowing the Indigenous folks to come forward with their ideas and their suggestions, because we're the consumers of, these books by authors that we want to read from, and podcasts that we want to listen to. And then it's from an Indigenous perspective, and we're able to share that with the people that we work with. It helps kind of bridge some understanding and lend a little cultural context to our character and who comes with us when we go into the office or join a Zoom call with our colleagues. That is really exciting. Taylor, what was my question? What would you say to Indigenous communications professionals looking to work for Enbridge or a company similar to yours?
I guess I say is, if you're interested in being an influence, being a voice, listen, sharing, and teaching, it's a great opportunity. This Enbridge is a company that really does listen. Their core values they live by them, which is safety, integrity, respect, and inclusion. They have internally, it's very similar to what Brittany said. We do have, employee-run groups that we have, groups that we get together, and they will, we can teach how to bead, just have conversations. We had one on Indigenous Peoples Day just to talk about the day. And you're networking internally, and you're getting to know each other, which is really, really nice to have. I mean, the support and meeting people that you wouldn't have met before because the company is so big. and, you know, to share ideas and to grow internally is really nice. They do support that. And then it's not internally seeing it inside, they share it out in the community. You know, when I go out and I bring people on different types of tours, like when we go to Marshall, Michigan, it's very meaningful engagement because it's one-on-one, or you're in a group and you're talking about, you know, different types of situations that's happened. And, you know, we say, hey, you know, we're not perfect, but we're learning. And they have that open mind to listen and to be better. And, you know, that having that open communication is really nice between the people, the communities, and internal employees. And, you know, I've worked for other businesses out there, and I can say that I've never felt more at home than working with this company because of, you know, what they have internally for being Indigenous and all of the people that are there, and being out in the community. It's so nice. You know, I get to sit down and talk to people about it, and going back to, like, you know, what Ben said earlier about the stories, that really did touch home, because I was always told that, you know, stories is something that we share and we carry down with us. And I get to do that. You know, I get to talk about what we're doing, you know, the projects that we have going on, and, you know, how can we be better, and ask these questions and sit at the table. And if you want to be that change, I'm more than happy to support anybody who wants to go that route, and I would highly recommend it.
I just want to thank you all for coming, sharing your experiences, your knowledge, and just all of the ways that you're impacting and lifting up Indigenous communities and the work that you do. It's so important, as you know, more than anyone, being Indigenous yourself. It's so appreciated. And I'm just very thankful that you shared your time with us this evening and with our audience. I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the special segment, and we're going to have Unique Yazi join us now. But first, we're going to watch a video, a land acknowledgement video that Unique produced in her work. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to Kayla to operate that for the panel. Thank you. Oh, here we go.
Creator, we acknowledge your gifts as blessings.
We acknowledge today with a grateful presence, the surrounding air's vital breath, the purifying fire's foregoing glow, the earthly body's foundation of rebirth, the water's bending reflection of light's return.
We acknowledge the sky's infinite transcendences, the grace of a day rising to fall into darkness, awakening the secrets of creation's essence.
We acknowledge the protection of the sun and the moon.
We acknowledge the diligent placement of the stars, guiding lights in the vast cold universe. The scattered stories of our deities.
We acknowledge the languages, culture, and ways of life born from the desert, canyons, mountain ranges, and valleys.
In present-day Phoenix, Arizona, we acknowledge the unceded ancestral lands of the O'odham, Peeposh, and Yaqui peoples.
We acknowledge the federally recognized and unrecognized sovereign nations.
We acknowledge the countless Indigenous peoples residing on this land.
We are still here.
Hello, everyone. First off, let me introduce myself. My name is Unique Yazi. I am Diné from the Navajo Nation, specifically Canyon de Chelly, the Chinle Agency. I am Nanish Ejatachitni, Maindish Gijni, Todachitni, and Kia'ani, and those are my clanships from my grandmothers and all of the people that came before me. Originally, when we created this video, it was more of a spur of the moment, just wanting to acknowledge the land that we are on, but doing it in a way that allowed us to tell story through visuals, through producing video works to show like, the land itself and to show all of the how people interacted with the land. The cool thing is that this video was in collaboration with a ton of Indigenous creatives, but also some community supporters that were in the area. Indie Film Fest, who is run by the Mango Skies production, was able to lend us a lot of the resources that we needed to produce this film. And it was so cool to be able to find support in a way that allowed this story to kind of exist in the form that it could. And I know that for downtown Phoenix, there's not really been a whole lot of recognition or acknowledging of Indigenous peoples prior to 2020. Even now, it's kind of sparse, but yeah, that's kind of the initiative that we took, and we hired a creative individual who is also Navajo, Luke Hunt. He was freshly out of college looking for work and realized that he could put some video work together. And luckily, Mango Skies production already had drone footage from doing a national park project years before that didn't really get off the ground because of COVID. So it was just cool to see this. Yeah, it was cool to see the footage being used for something entirely different, but also recognizing that this land has Indigenous connections and that, you know, there are still people here that care for it and that take care of it.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing the video with us, Unique. I know that a lot of heart and intention went into the production of the video. Can you tell us a little bit about what the significance of this video means to your local community, the Indigenous community?
Yeah, so I'm a designer, a storyteller, a poet, also a creative advocate. And so a lot of the work that I do is within the terms of placekeeping and placemaking in downtown Phoenix. I've been doing this work for the last 20 years in this area, and while telling stories and telling poetry and taking the stage to really share my experiences, this video was an effort to be able to combine those skill sets as far as like writing and creating a prayer, an acknowledgement from Native people to the land. So it's more of a poem to the land. And the cool thing is Luke and I were able to talk through what that would look like when you have a male and a female, you know, looking at the land and wanting to express themselves in a way that that had meaning behind where we come from, what we call home. I'm not an original native to Phoenix, Arizona, but I am native to Canyon de Chelly. You can see my background. This is my homelands. Grew up in this area, and so Arizona is just so vast in the way that the lands elevate through the desert lands, through the higher desert lands, and then you got the canyon lands. There's just so much rich history that are, carved into all of the walls and the canyons, into all the forests, and the people that record it and the people that tell those stories are Indigenous peoples. And so what better way to do an acknowledgement than in a visual form that not only acknowledges our existence, but the existence within the universe, right? And so like how do we take place in this large expanse of life? And just seeing ourselves really small and being part of that story, how are we being good stewards to that? And how are we able to tell stories like this that allow people to collaborate and be part of it, and show the respect that's needed?
I love that. And I know firsthand how much work you were doing behind the scenes to make sure that this was incorporating Indigenous talent, from the voiceovers to the music to the composition, and it's just such a beautiful tribute. There was an article in the Daily Princetonian at the earlier part of October, and there's tribal experts and academia that are saying, land acknowledgements are beautiful, and we're seeing more of that happening in universities and with other organizations and corporations. But some of those same folks are saying that it's just a beginning. It's just an introduction into how we can better support and be allies to tribes. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I think that there are so many different tribes, right, in the nation, as far as like how each tribe wants to be acknowledged, how they want to take up space, and each of them are going to be different. There's 574 nations across the nation. And so when you take into account, how to represent them appropriately, it really goes back to creating those relationships and bringing those people into the discussion of what would you do if you were provided this space or provided this outlet to tell your story. And so when we started on this, obviously, like I'm Navajo, and I wanted the voices to be from O'odham descent or Peeposh. And I know Lourdes and Joanne Miles Long, they have been voices in the community that, not necessarily they're not voice actors, so to say, like I think that was their first time ever reading anything. But it was really cool to walk them into a studio and start talking to them about what it means to have their voices, forever in a film like this that talks about the land. And it was amazing to hear them read over and over again, getting the right accents in and the right fluctuations. And afterwards, Joanne and Lourdes, they walked out and they were like, after saying it repeatedly over and over again, she's like, I almost started to cry because it was like a prayer, and I can hear the prayer being sent out, and I was a part of that. And so just to have somebody resonate with those words because they mean so much, and to have that feeling and walk away with it, it means so much to know that we all share that we all we want to creatively express ourselves, and we don't know if we're good at it or not, right? We don't know if we're going to be amazing at what we're going to put out, but it just turned out that this was the perfect type of outlet for them. And we got into a discussion about unceded territories and unrecognized nations. That's a lot of the discussion, that when you talk about land acknowledgement, a lot of the discussion is, yeah, we can acknowledge the land, but what about the people that are unrecognized, federally unrecognized, and that never signed a treaty, right? And they don't have land rights and they don't have treaty rights. And it goes into deeper conversations of what that means to our people, and how do we how are we inclusive of those stories? And so it was just an amazing conversation point, and I was able to have that with two amazing, beautiful women that are doing such good things for their community. And I just think we need more discussions like that. We need more projects that collaborate, that cross collaborate, and that are intertribal, so that we can begin sharing those.
That's amazing. Well, I want to thank you for sharing your beautiful gift, this prayer in a video with all of us. And you're welcome to stay on and participate in the panel discussion. But we're going to go ahead and move on to that segment now. And I think we have all of our panelists here. I'm going to run down the list real quick. Again, thank you so much, Unique. I really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thank you.
So for our second panel, we're actually going to talk about mixed medium storytelling. So using digital media, not virtual reality, augmented reality with John Canyon, and art. And in all of its different creative mediums with that. So for our second panel, we've got John Canyon, who is augmented reality storyteller. We have Melody Lewis, who is a Response Pilot YouTube content creator and director. We've got Jeremy Arvizo, who is in marketing and communications, but he is also an artist, a designer, and visionary for his companies. We have Kelsey Lee, who is a chief executive member with Happy Accidents and her media production company. And we'll go ahead and start with John Canyon.
Thank you, Candace. Glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. For myself, John Canyon, I'm Dene Navajo as well. I grew up here in Phoenix, Arizona, and had the opportunity to work in different areas and fields. Started off with regenerative medicine, stem cell therapy, more of a science background. As those doors started opening up, started creating opportunities, seeing a need to work with indigenous communities, tribes, and non-native businesses, and really kind of create those collaboration and partner and community partners, definitely necessary for any type of success. So for myself, I have Canyon Connections, where I do work with a lot of different organizations and tribes and also non-native businesses to really kind of connect the dots and communications. I also work with a group called Native Health Advisors that really kind of creates opportunities for indigenous communities to really connect with different technology that's out there and bring it to different tribal communities that truly need it.
I love it. And Melody?
Hi, Candace. Hello, everyone. Gamadu. My name is Melody Lewis, and I am Mojave Tewan Hopi, raised on the Fort Mojave Indian tribe. I'm going to start out with my introduction just slightly different from normal, but I just want to share of how I identify. And so I identify as a social entrepreneur, a modern day matriarch, and an advocate for Indigenous communities, specifically Indigenous youth. And I am a co-host for a podcast called Tribal Health, the podcast, where we talk about healthcare disparities in tribal communities. And I'm here representing today Response, which is a YouTube channel, which is surrounded around Indigenous identity. And I am the founder and owner of Indigenous Community Collaborative, and now just more recently, the founder for Response Productions, which we're going to be talking about today. And, some of the things that we do is at Indigenous CC is create strategies that are surrounded around education, workforce development, and DEI. And we do that in the form of revitalizing the Indigenous perspective and collaborating with folks that are already doing amazing things. And, with the Response YouTube, we always, I'm just going to do a little call to action while we're here as we go on through the introductions. But part of, some of the things that we've been hearing is connecting with other communities and that power of connection. And, in our YouTube channel, we start out with saying, what is your favorite res slang, and use it in a sentence. So if you guys want to drop that in the chat, that would be awesome to see. But thank you for having me, and excited to get into this discussion.
Thank you, Melody. I love that. And that's such a great opener for Response to share your favorite res slang. I love that. Jeremy, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, I'm Jeremy. Well, first off, hello everybody. I'm thrilled to be here today and hear everybody's story. Lots of very, very interesting and unique perspectives, and it's nice to hear. I'm Jeremy Donovan Arviso. I'm Dene, Hopi, Pima, and Tono Atom. I was born and raised here in Phoenix, Arizona. Grew up here in the city, and I am an artist and designer. I have a company that I offer brand identity, strategy, and solutions. I have a clothing company called The Original Landlords and another one called Just Cute. And I am the marketing director for Adventurous Antelope Canyon Tours. We do guided tours of the Upper Antelope Canyon in northern Arizona. I have been a multimedia designer for 20 years. I have used my talents to, so many different types of applications. There's just so many to name. I work with Cahokia as an ambassador. I've worked on many projects with Cahokia, and we've come up with some amazing solutions to so many problems for inner city Native designers. Most recently, I just returned from a tribal tourism conference where I presented on tribal tourism and what it means to offer, tribal tourism to the world. I feel that as more and more people are finding out about Native Americans through pop culture, such as TV like Reservation Dogs, TV shows and movies, we are becoming more and more visible to many more people. With that, tourism is a big, factor of how many people are coming here to see us. They're starting to realize that what they've seen in movies and TVs and on TV in the past is not what it is today. So they really want to feel, see, hear, smell culture. And when they come to these tourism conferences and they see a person like me, they're expecting to see somebody like in traditional clothing, and I'm not traditional in any sense of the word. For me, I love it just because I want them to know that we're not all living in teepees. We all don't live in hogans. I live in the city. So being that mediator for the traditional people who we represent, and also the people here, the more conservative, contemporary people. I think that's who we represent, is the more contemporary. At least I do. I'm a ex graffiti vandal, and I learned a lot about art and design, out here in the street. And I've used that knowledge of typography, in all aspects of design. And I apply it to all the work that I do.
I love that. Well, thank you. For the introduction. We're going to go ahead and move on to Kelsey, and then we'll come back and actually get into some of the more details of your work. Kelsey, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, hello. She Kelsey Lee Yanisha Sitnaji Nishla Sedish Gizni Bashachi German Dasha Che Kia Ani Dasha Nella. My name is Kelsey Lee. I am the Chief Executive Member of Happy Accidents Media Production. It sounds nice, but that just means I have to do all the paperwork. And I'm from Cameron, Arizona. I graduated from NAU with a Bachelor's of Science in Electronic Media and Film, and I have a minor from Sedona Film Institute for Independent Filmmaking. And so I made it a mission with our business to try and do our work out of the reservation from our hometown, to just be more involved with the community and kind of help the community, like lift the community up as we build our business.
I love that. We're going to go ahead and get started. I think that was everyone that is going to be part of this panel. The first question is, can you tell us how this leap into digital platforms has impacted the way you tell your stories? We'll go ahead and start with you, Melody.
Like the previous panel, I got the hot seat, huh? I forget who said that. Yeah, sure. So I think the biggest phrase that most businesses use is when they say like when COVID hit, right? ... So, for us with Indigenous CC, we were a service-based entity and kind of used the extension of going into the digital space during that time, really out of the form of having to diversify in a time where we were no longer able to meet in person. But it was such a gift and a blessing to be able to do that because it's connected me to many different people across the nation, right? And across generations. And I think that's what the digital platform has helped me do and has impacted me, was be able to connect across generations and connect across different tribal communities. I think what it has done for me personally, as somebody that, wants to share stories and experiences, again, the YouTube was created specifically to target and support Indigenous youth. Again, in a time where we couldn't connect, which was part of our value system, is to be in community and connecting with others. And I think the YouTube platform and being able to share our experiences and our lived experiences was an opportunity for us to have these kind of like external conversations with youth if they tapped into watching some of the content we created on YouTube. And I think that alone, what we were hoping to do was really trying to share any lived experience that we had with our guests or ourselves that were on the show, and just asking them simply and plainly, like, tell me, what is it like being Native for you in your scope, in your environment, in your job, your career, wherever our guest was coming from. And we would just talk about that. And I think what that has done for many of the folks that watch our YouTube, it really supported them in their own personal identity journey and allowed for them to really see that they're not alone in that experience, or they are able to learn from our mistakes or our path or our journey, and hopefully that contributed to their experience to help them kind of navigate a certain space easier. And I think what this entire panel and this entire discussion has done is really talked about those value systems that we have as Native people, and really trying to figure out how can we give back to our communities in the form of, sharing our knowledge or sharing our experience or sharing our stories, so it could then in turn help them. So I think, these digital platforms have allowed for us to do that, and in turn have also allowed for us to heal too, as we talk about some of these stories. So yeah, that's all I got.
John, I know that you're kind of taking it to a whole nother dimension with your digital storytelling. Can you share with us this augmented reality and the tool that you use to bring those stories to life?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And the way I like to really kind of start this up is to bring up an image. And as everyone has a chance to pull this image up, if you can go full screen on that, perfect. Thank you. So you'll see this image, and you can imagine, just kind of close your eyes and picture you're walking through a museum, you're going to picture, and all of a sudden you see this picture, you look at it for a couple seconds, and you keep on going, right? So here's the story about this picture, and I always get a little bit emotional because this is a picture about an 8 to 10-year-old boy, and I have a 10-year-old boy. This boy was actually taken from home and was sent to a boarding school. And if you look closely, you'll see his elbows are all bloody. So at the time, this is actually a true story. The people who were actually taking care of the kids, they had a room full of kids, boys and girls. One of the caretakers was getting frustrated with the little boy because his elbows and knees were dirty. Anyone who's Indigenous or people of color, you'll know that is what happens sometimes. And so they scrubbed it, and they got so frustrated with him. I believe they used a wire brush to scrub that dirt. And the poor boy was crying, and he was bloody, and they told him to go to bed. And when he went to bed, he was crying even more. And the person got really frustrated with him, went to him and saw that he bled all over his sheets. And they grabbed him and took him to a back room, and they were beating him. And all they could hear was a screaming and crying, and all the kids in the room could hear it. And all of a sudden it stopped. And no one saw that little kid again. And so as we kind of go and see these images and we talk about being Indigenous, we talk about sharing the story, this is the story. The story brings power to us to be Indigenous. So when we truly understand the story and we understand where it's coming from, we understand behind the scenes, we actually begin to feel that power. And so that was one of the goals, is how do we bring this idea of who we are, what we are, the history. So when you walk past this, you see something different. Now, what I want to describe is if you can picture now a shipping container. Roosevelt Row, which is in Phoenix, Arizona, and also with Cahokia, really teamed up on a project called The Uncontained. And this is basically a shipping container. If you can actually go to the video, and I'll show you this video, and you can imagine this is actually an image of a shipping container. There's an art piece on it, right? So if you actually have an app and you hold your phone up and go ahead and play it if you could. The shipping container. And then you're going to see the phone. This is what they'll see. So all you have to do is hold the phone up to the image and it will actually go ahead. And this is where the artist can tell stories, can tell them what they're doing. And if there's audio to this, you actually can play the audio if you can. So as you can see closely here, you'll probably notice that there was cars driving by, there are people walking by. So when you hold your phone up to that image, it will play the video associated with it. And that could be the artist telling the story. So you can imagine now, go with me to the Grand Canyon. You have 22 tribes in the state of Arizona. The Grand Canyon means a lot to those tribal communities around it. So each tribe can actually tell their story. So you can actually hold up and have a 1950s black and white picture of a Hopi woman telling the story. And then all of a sudden it can be a leader of the Hopi Nation telling their story and what the canyon means to them and why it's so important to their generation. So as we start telling these opportunities, we're creating this. And it was recently told to me in COVID, I love this individual tribal leader shared that during COVID, when we lost our elders, a library died. And that was so true. It was so true. And unfortunately, we found out in COVID, the communication, all the elders were told in a lot of different languages, when it's translated, means a bad cold or a bad flu. They never knew and understood that this was something completely different. And so we lost a lot of our elders during that time. And so now we kind of get a glimpse of the importance of communication. Now, by flip it, our youth are losing their identity. They're losing their culture. They're losing who they are. So now it's so important. And it's now the youth are telling their story differently than what our traditional elders are. Doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's different. And I think Jeremy is a good way of sharing that. He says, I'm native. I'm not your traditional native that you might envision, but here's my story. Here's what I identify as. I grew up with graffiti art, and that's where, and I adopted that. And that's where, and you can start seeing the roots of the story. So when you pull up a picture or an image that Jeremy Art did, you can now hear his story and what that passion means. And so I think when it comes to becoming storytellers, we are starting to have a lot more tools available for us. And how do we adapt those tools and how we apply those tools is a whole different thing. So that's what I work on, is provide opportunities for our Indigenous stories and who we are, and to be able to continue to be shared in different ways.
I love that. And that was so impactful. It just really helps you feel what that experience is like from the perspective of, your subject using that app, of really bringing storytelling to life. And it was a nice segue to Jeremy, because Jeremy is also a storyteller in his own way with very contemporary mediums. And Jeremy, can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. I started doing digital media storytelling. My first one was 11 years ago. And what we realized, me and a group of friends, is that nobody was going to tell our stories except us. We weren't getting any kind of interest from magazines or any type of media. It's not like how it is today, where we have Cahokia and we've got all these people that are so interested in us. This is like 11 years ago when nobody was doing this, so we're like, we have to do this on our own. We had to learn the software. We got to learn how to shoot all this. Luckily, me and my friend Dosh Collins, we had shot a movie in 2004 with New Line Cinema. So we kind of knew how to do cinematography and how to act and how to shoot in different types of lighting. So we figured out how to do editing and transitioning, and we learned that on our own. So we put together a reel for me that was like an artist statement. I was asked to present an artist statement for a couple of grants and stuff like that. And instead of writing one out, I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna send the video and will you help me? And we shot it in Tempe when I was living there. And it really captured how my process works. And it was the first of its kind, and at the time, I think it was like MySpace had just fizzled out or whatever. And Facebook was very, very new. Twitter was very, very new. And I don't even think Instagram was even a thing yet. And so we started sharing it through YouTube, and it just kind of, I ended up getting what I was asking for, with the grants and whatnot. And that just kind of led to me doing multiple, storytelling reels using Vimeo. And they have all helped me with different types of fundraising events, and also just telling people my story about, how I got to where I had been. All through the 2010s, all the way up to 2020, when the pandemic hit. I did another one of my getting out of prison and what happened when I got out of. When I was in prison, the pandemic had hit. George Floyd was murdered while I was in prison. I watched all this from inside. Watched the whole world just go up in flames and just literally go upside down. I read like 35 books. I listened to NPR and classical music every day. So I made a plan when I was in there that when I got out, I would put this plan in motion. So when I got out, I didn't have anything. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have software. I didn't have nothing. All I had was an iPad. I used the iPad to create a short video and just kind of started to do what I could to, make money. And I got a grant. With that grant, I bought a laptop, and then I got another grant. I bought a phone. Just with the phone and a laptop, I was able to create a video that would, show people about the website that I was building. With the website, I was able to have a store built into it, which, got me into e-commerce, and I was able to create a business for myself, the Original Landlords, my branding business, and now I started to catch the attention of multiple companies, becoming clean and sober from drugs and alcohol, and being an advocate for that. I ended up getting more work. My company, Adventures Antelope Canyon Tours, reopened, and they hired me back as their marketing director. I came back with a completely different way of marketing, not just our tours, but the nation itself. And now I'm working for the Phoenix Suns. It's the whole thing's a story, about the being resilient, making a plan and sticking to it. And the same message I had 11 years ago in that first video is the same one I have now. And it hasn't changed one bit. I still do art design. I still do the exact same thing I was doing, except now I'm clean and sober, and I'm just much more visible, and technology's changed. Now I tell my story through NFTs, and the landscape has changed so much. My son is 11, now we're designing things for, Web3, in the metaverse. And that's where I see a lot of this heading is in the direction that John's going as well, is taking that traditional stuff and bringing it into the next level, next frontier.
I love that. And speaking of different frontiers, Kelsey, I know that your work as a filmmaker has touched and impacted many Indigenous communities, and you being a Diné woman, your work has directly impacted your own community. Can you share a little bit about that type of work that you do?
Yeah, so I kind of do two different things. On one side, I do a lot of like creative stuff for music videos and stuff. And on the other side is I do videos and help Native nonprofits create media. So one that impacted a lot of different communities, we did a monthly video for their organization, and their organization had like an office in almost every tribal region across the United States. So we were able to help them communicate with each other during COVID because they weren't able to meet up. So we created little monthly videos for them to talk and connect and share images from each of their communities virtually. So we'd go on something like Zoom, and I would record them talking and add all those images to a video that they would share with their whole organization. And right now I'm doing volunteer work to help my own community of Cameron. And there's different things that go with that. But one of the things I like doing in that volunteer work is helping a lot of the older people who are more active in community work and community development get used to, or at least tolerate, the technology of doing Zoom meetings and having hybrid meetings, because there's a lot of pushback where they don't fully understand it. So they just want to meet in a group and come together and talk in a physical space. But with the Navajo Nation laws and guidelines right now, we still can't meet in the capacity that they want to. So I helped facilitate meetings like this where I even invited some of the people to my own house and set up a separate laptop. So they had everything set up. They just had to push the mute and unmute button and were able to talk. And they didn't have to worry about conducting the meeting themselves. And I conducted the meeting for them. And they were able to voice their concerns and stuff with other people, and inviting other people into the conversation, just having a discussion like this. But for them, it's really hard to wrap their head around that concept in a way with the different technologies. So with my own community, I try and bridge like the older elder people with the newer technologies, and how younger people of my age and generations younger than me interact, just to try and bring more of the youth into the community development and volunteer work in that way.
Wow, that sounds like it's probably really rewarding too that you're working with Indigenous youth, because you know, you are essentially providing sort of those mentorships, which are so important. And when it comes to, you know, developing the stories in your work, you know, we're creating content for the future, right? So we're really all about trying to bring people along with us from all the ages across the spectrum on these digital storytelling journeys. So it has to be really, feel really good at the end of the day to know that you're having that kind of impact with the work that you do. Jeremy, I know that you know, we provided your video in the chat, but quickly, can you tell us other ways that you do digital storytelling through your NFTs? I know you mentioned that a little bit. Can you give us a little bit more information?
Sure. I actually have done more than before NFTs were a thing. I actually developed an app with two friends of mine. Israel Shortman, he's a software developer. He works for Walmart. Another friend is Jake Frawa. He's a multimedia artist. He is James Pueblo. We developed the very first magazine app, and we debuted it in 2015 at Indian Market. That was the first magazine that we know that has been available in Indigenous, focusing on Indigenous artists, photographers, chefs, you know, the whole spectrum. That was very, very well received, and it was the very first of its kind in digital format like that. Another one that I did was a native storytelling app that I did along with Israel Shortman, and it told the story of Navajo weaving. I also just worked last year on a project with Seventh Generation Games. They're based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I designed an entire learning game for mathematics, and it's part of a STEM program. That was a very intense project. It's a game that you can actually play and learn Navajo, and also how to, do measurements, weights and measures and stuff like that. It's all in Navajo. Yeah, it was a really great program to be a part of. That was also a storytelling app. The NFT deal was very new to me. I had to literally teach myself all about it. First, teaching myself what is cryptocurrency, how is it used, setting up the accounts. Just doing that part of it was very difficult, understanding it. I really believe that that whole system is built by the wealthy for the wealthy, for marginalized people such as us, who we are, where we come from. It's not meant for us, So coming from where we're at, trying to understand something that's so ahead of most people's heads. I mean, how are our own people going to understand it? And at Indian Market this past summer, I tried explaining it to people, and they just could not even know. They just did not understand anything about it, even if I tried to understand it. So bringing that conversation into Indigenous, minds is very, very new, even to me. And it's still kind of like, what is this thing? But it is the metaverse. If you have kids, cousins, nieces, nephews, they're probably playing Roblox or something like that. That is the metaverse. And one of the things that you can do that has already been done already for a really long time in video games is avatars. You're able to dress your avatar, and you're able to change the hair, all that stuff. Well, what high fashion brands have been doing now is they've been having their clothes available in the metaverse that you can buy and sell and dress your avatar in. Why wouldn't we be able to have traditional clothing in the metaverse? I think that's the next frontier. That would be really dope to see. I personally am working on getting my brand into the metaverse, but I'm thinking it'd be dope to have people wearing jingle dresses, in Roblox.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Roblox or something like that, wearing, like Native American traditional clothing in the metaverse would be really dope.
Thank you. I feel like the impact that you all are making as digital storytellers really help highlight the beautiful, diverse culture, heritage, our customs. And I'm excited to see what new projects you'll be working on in the days and years ahead as you continue to really be trailblazers in your respective industries and in your projects. I'm going to turn it over to Faye Shapiro, who is going to run the Q&A portion. So I hope that we'll continue to have these conversations and you guys can share more of your insights. But I want to make sure, yes, today is Jeremy's birthday. So first, happy birthday to Jeremy. Thank you for allowing us to spend part of your special day with you. Kathy is going to be leading the Q&A portion of the panel, and she was on the first segment with us. She works with Nike, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kathy now. Thank you.
Thanks, Candace. You did such a great job.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, hello, everyone again. I thought maybe we could invite the other panelists also to come back, just in case. I had a few questions here and I thought we could sort of tag team it all. But everyone's comments were so amazing. If you're still from the first panel and you want to come back, that would be great. There was a question in chat, which I thought was kind of interesting. Sorry, not in chat, in the Q&A function, which is around like how we are portrayed and represented in the media, which is something that I have done some work in, just related to, I'm on the board of Illuminative. But the mention was, and I can basically read it, it just says, being an advocate of the LGBTQ+ community they've had GLAAD, the organization GLAAD, monitoring representation in the media and offering direction and correction over the years. And I know we are now so much more visible in media, I think, than we ever have been. The question was whether we have a similar association or organization doing that. And I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's a variety of people who are involved in correction and also making sure we are portrayed. But especially in our creators, is there any work or folks or individuals or efforts you can talk about that sort of are in that mindset and helping us be portrayed accurately in media, especially in ways that are probably not created by Indigenous people? And Yellowstone was actually referenced in here as one example, but I don't know that we want to get into that topic. That might be another subject for another day, but.
I'll just go ahead and chime in here, but really, I think you mentioned the one that I lean on personally when looking about Indigenous representation, which is Illuminative. I think Illuminative is trailblazing the way of understanding and getting feedback from Indigenous communities on accurate representation. That doesn't speak on behalf of a single nation, but really just does a great job of collecting the data and sharing resources and guidelines. And if you don't follow them, you should follow Illuminative on their social media, because they also do a really great job of capacity building. So that's my resources, Illuminative.
Thanks so much, Melody.
For me, I really look towards the youth, just because they see the world a lot different than we all do. I really think that their outlook on how they see themselves is definitely the future of how we will. We all kind of have our own perspective of how we all see each other and, you know, how we were raised. But I really think the youth is the key to what, you know, how we're really going to be portrayed, which is why I really dig the Reservation Dogs series. Really, it's a very poignant storytelling. And it's very, very current too, and in like today's day and age.
Great place for res slang as well too. They do a really good job of that. Awesome, very cool. Yeah, follow at Illuminatives. It's a really good educational resource and community supporter. How about just any comments on how technology can enhance the work of traditional artists?
And I think that as you start looking at the opportunity of creating that story, if you can picture for a second, you're running down the hallway, you got Starbucks on the left, and you got a local coffee shop on the right. Which one do you go to? So if you learn that the local coffee shop does 15% of their revenue goes to help children, or, you know, the story behind it. I think as technology is all about stories and connecting. As you follow any type of Instagram for any type of your shoes you like, N7, for example, you know, there's always going to be a story connection where the person can identify that. And I think with that type of technology, especially AR technology, same idea. Right now, give it about a year, you can walk into any store, move your phone left, right, up, down. It'll recognize where you're at, and it'll give you any type of digital coupon. So then you can go ahead and show it to it. So talking about using and leveraging the technology for small business, especially native businesses, there is so much opportunity. It's just now, how do we be a part of that? We don't want to be left behind. I see amazing people who are doing some amazing stuff. Najoni Soaps is one of my favorites. She's a young Navajo woman that is just killing it. She's gotten stores open, but she started off with social media. So, you know, using that technology to build your brand and to be able to help that out, and also looking what the future can provide and integrate that and adapt to that with your business, I think it could be a huge difference.
Amazing. Great responses. For our communicators from our earlier panel, from panel number 1, we talked a lot on this panel about the new generation. I love what Jeremy said about the youth. They're holding us accountable. They are modern AF. They are pushing us into new territory. I have one. I have my own daughter. I have 3 stepchildren. I have other children. I'm an auntie, so I hear it regularly. What are some of the attributes communicators are seeing in our younger workforce coming in, and how are they pushing us, like in terms of the way we communicate today?
I want to kind of piggyback off of John, right, in terms of Native artists. I know that within our reservation, we have a lot of older artists, and learning technology, right? We have Caillou Shared Holdings, who has a program where they're actually teaching our elders how to utilize those social platforms and how to capitalize. You don't just have to go to a powwow anymore to sell your art, right? And so being present online and teaching our elders that social media is a benefit. But I just wanted to piggyback off that, because we can't forget our elders while we look towards our youth in the future, but our elders are here. They remind us every day that our stories are important, and their crafts and their arts, beautiful, beautiful.
I really love that, Leona.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that too. I do a lot of vending myself, and one of the things that I notice more and more lately is access to technology. A lot of people don't have it. You know, phones are very expensive. Wi-Fi is expensive. You know, the cost of living is going up. You know, I see a lot of, me and Unique we have people that come to Cahokia so they can use the internet, or they can use our stuff that we have available to them, you know, because they don't have it at home. So one of the things that I've been seeing is lack of, you know, education, and I help these elders out at the vending tables. You know, they're like, how do I, you know, help me? And so I'll be sitting there linking up their Square, you know, or hooking up their PayPal, or, you know, showing them, you know, this is how you use this is how you take a payment, you know. And that is one thing that I see out there that is lacking, is education and access.
I'd like to chime into about technology. I'm actually a senior analyst that kind of looks into applications and how they can integrate and work together. That's another hat I wear. But one of the things that I think in my lifetime that I've learned, that I've seen blended between natives, is that we are all system thinkers. And the fact that we understand things in a way that we can hack things, like we can see resources, we can see outputs, we can see inputs, and we decide what we want to do with those. That is very creative, very artistic, but it's a way that we are able to create a whole system inside of something that wasn't meant for us. And I think this is why we exist today, and why we're so vibrant, and why our cultures are still intact, is because we were able to hack the system earlier on. Now that the digital frontier is here, what do we do with that, right? What are we going to do moving forward? And that's like the most exciting thing for me, especially now that, you know, I'm incorporating the art into the creativity, into the integrations. And it's like, wow, if we do this all together, we could really, really tell bigger stories and impact bigger decisions for our future. So I love this conversation.
I love the conversation about elders too. It's so important. And, you know, I don't know, we all have a mom or auntie on Facebook that goes a little crazy. We got to rein them in sometimes. My mom is really out there on Facebook, and I have to constantly like get to her app and delete stuff for her, like change settings. And anyway, yeah. And it's so interesting, because sometimes I find some folks in community who want to learn how to use these apps or use Facebook, but they don't necessarily have the computer skills, like the computer literacy too. So it's just, there's a lot. And I think somebody had put in chat, I really like this, was just like, can y'all do a thing to explain this and make traditional folks more comfortable with the ways we are communicating? It feels like there's almost like classes or resources that we could team up on. Any other final comments, any advice to those who are attending this? I'm sure we have a mix of people in the profession, a mix of Indian country, non-Indian country, folks in the communications profession.
I just want to make a blanket statement just about workforce, because I come from like the workforce development side. And I think just to, you know, respond to Jessica's comment about how to communicate about the importance of this digital wave we're going through. I think what I've experienced when working with younger generations and college students is really that they're challenging me personally, like I'm the auntie now too, of how to set boundaries and think about what my value sets were for, you know, like for my parents was retirement. And for me, it's not retirement. It's like, can I have some, you know, a place to work from home, you know, and not have to, like, retirement's not a thing for me like it was for my parents. So my values for generations across are different. And for the younger generation, it's like, I value my time and I'm setting boundaries. And that challenged me personally, because I was like, what do you mean you don't work 24/7, 7 days a week like I do? You know, like, what do you mean set boundaries? So I think just talking about understanding those value sets across that generation is very important, which then will also tell us like how important is digital communication across those generations. And I know it's very high to the younger generation and not so much to the older generations, right? Like, so how do we navigate that?
I think I just want to add, you know, to all the communicators and communicators attending, but just to be true to yourself, right? We as tribal people, I mean, oftentimes the other people are telling our narrative, and take control of it. Like, empower yourself, empower your community, empower your elders and your youth to just tell your narrative, and the real narrative, not the created one that they want to put out there, but be open and honest with it.
Okay, well, Pila Tonka, my friends and brothers and sisters, and to the audience who attended, and thank you to the Museum of PR who has asked us all to be here. I really enjoyed this. I enjoy spending time with Indigenous people who are also doing similar things that I'm trying to do, and we all are serving community in so many ways. And so in closing, I'm going to turn it back over to Kayla, who will give us a final roundup of thank yous to our sponsors and all of that. But appreciate you all so much. And please stay connected with me. I would love to be in touch.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and to all of our panelists. Tonight has been a great discussion, and we've definitely seen that while the role of Native Americans in traditional PR may be growing, community building and using communications is already a deep-seated well-known culture within Indigenous communities, and the museum is so grateful to have had all of you on for these amazing panels. Before we close out, we are going to thank our sponsors one last time. Again, it's our sponsors who make these events possible, and they are the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communications, Amazon, SAIC, Enbridge, Page, Profit PR, Renew PR, TV One, Bonnie Yablon Foundation, Spokesman Communications, the Diversity Action Alliance, Muckrack, and Compro. Thank you all for being here. Have a great night and have a happy Native American Heritage Month.